Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the final day of the HAC National Rural Housing Conference and the nuts and bolts session for HUD Breakout. So we are officially in the home stretch. I love when I can use those sports terms and pretend they're really about housing. So this is your opportunity to ask questions about the HUD programs that you use directly from the experts. So when I first came to HUD or to HAC 3 years ago, I was surprised at how many programs that the Department of Housing and Urban Development impacted rural America. I guess until I got to HAC, I was really focused on the urban part of HUD. So we have a great panel today from across HUD, including Todd, who you just heard from, and folks responsible for just about every program that we work with. RCB, Section 4, SHOP, Veterans Home Rehab Program, Home, State and Small Cities CDBG, Housing Trust Fund, Environmental Reviews, and more. I do want to give you a heads up, though, that this may be your last chance to pepper Steve Washington with questions about HUD anyway. So pile them on for Steve. Steve is retiring at the end of the month. Steve will be sorely missed. He has been a strong advocate for rural housing and HAC, especially the Rural Capacity Program. And recently he co-wrote the lead article for Our Rural Voices on COVID and the new normal. So please join me in congratulating Steve and thanking him for his long service for all things rural. Thank you. So in addition to Steve and Todd, who I already mentioned, we have Ayada Green, Robin Keegan, Laura Knutson, Robert Peterson, Caitlin Renner, and Jackie Williams. Since we have 8 panelists and lots of questions, rather than reading their bios, which I know you can all read if by clicking on their pictures below, I will jump right into questions. So the first one is a follow-on to Todd's comments earlier today. So if the rural population makes up 18% of people, yet the survey you cited noted that only 5 to 10% of people with HUD assistance live in rural America, how do we address this inequity, and how can we get more of HUD programs to hit rural in an equitable way?
Well, I mean, the statistic I quoted doesn't include the USDA program. So if we do factor in the USDA programs, we would want to do that to find out, sort of where the parity actually lies there. So that's something we should work with USDA on to be able to make sure that I could give you that statistic for all of our housing programs across the federal government. So that's a good area for cooperation with USDA and HUD. But I think in general, the HUD programs, as you noted, we provide a lot of money to rural areas, and Build Back Better is an opportunity, as well as the other programs that have been funded, to make sure that communities are competing for these funds effectively. So I want to go back to my original point when I was in the plenary session, is it's about capacity. We need to be building capacity in rural communities to be able to compete for these funds so that they can provide serve the housing needs that they have.
Thank you. So I'm going to pick on Todd again, just because he gave us such rich information last hour, and the questions need to be coming through. So you asked for us to help identify ways that the capacity building can help in communities. So one is how can the practitioners best get those suggestions to you?
So I think we have a lot of people on this call here who are the people who are going to be working on building on sort of our capacity building efforts. So I think maybe they can answer this question a little bit. So I had posed in the plenary session, I had said, we need to hear from the HAC community on how we can be providing capacity building best to them. What are the capacity building needs, and how can we get it to them? I noted that we have a lot of resources coming our way through technical assistance and through for Build Back Better, as well as more capacity building funds. So anybody else from our team want to sort of like say how you'd like to hear from the community? maybe we'll start with Steve, and then we can go to Robin.
Okay, so Todd, first of all, thanks for having me. We in my office run the Rural Capacity Building Program. And that, as Todd alluded to, one of the key things about not just getting money to rural communities, but is having an entity that has the strength and ability and the capacity, as we call it, to really use those funds in the proper way. So one of the things I want to make sure that you all understand is that there's the distinction between the technical assistance funds that we provide, where someone may come to us as in terms of a particular office. Let's say the Seattle office comes and said, this organization needs to have someone help them with their policies and procedures. Well, then we send somebody out there to do that. But with the Rural Capacity Building Program, we are doing just what Todd indicated we need to be doing, building and strengthening the capacity of the organization so that we can have them have the capability of doing the work. And the difference between TA and what we do is we actually have our particular entities like HAT go out and determine what the need is. What does this organization that they're going to help, what do they need? Do they need funding for a real estate person? Do they need some training on board development? It's building the capacity of the organization. So that's the difference in what we do with the Rural Capacity Building Program. We really don't look for our grantees to construct housing. We look for them to strengthen you, the ultimate benefactor of their funds, to learn how to do that, either going to a bank, going to the city, going to HUD, going to whoever to request funds and have that done. One other thing real quick while I have the floor. It was mentioned a little bit about funding and how there appears to be, and it is true, that rural communities are underfunded. They are underfunded. And really, best caveat to do that, to get more funding, is not what we, this panel, can do, because our hands are tied. We are not to go to Congress and to advocate for more funding. You, on the other hand, can do that. And it's done. We also manage the Section 4 program. There are 3 grantees there. They have a Habitat is one of them. They have a Habitat on the Hill. They do their own things. So I, with less than a month to go, I'm probably speaking a little bit more broadly than I should, but I can do that. And if they say leave early, Steve, you can't stay for 27 days. It's upon you. You have the ability to advocate for additional funding. I will leave with this. There has been some chatter, I'll use that term, about the fact that the rural capacity building has always been at the $5 million level. So there has been some discussion and some conversation, and I've been asked about that. And why is that? And I'll leave it at that. So we don't know what tomorrow holds, but there has been some chatter, discussion, inquiries about that. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to sort of paraphrase some of the questions because some of them are pretty long. But what can HUD do to help local organizations combat Nimbyism, not my backyard, those who are opposed to affordable housing simply because of the stigma?
I guess I'll start with this, and maybe others can chime in here a little bit. So this is a huge thing with the construction of affordable housing everywhere, whether it's in rural areas or urban areas, is getting adoption and saying, hey, we support building this housing. This is not a new thing. One thing that's in Build Back Better, which is some funding for planning money. Now, HUD doesn't, through our CDBG program, we provide funding for planning money, but a direct planning program for communities to sort of like do some planning around how they could be sort of addressing affordable housing. And that planning money comes with the idea of community input, getting people to sort of be part of the planning process on the front end so that they're just not saying, hey, I want to build this affordable housing property here. Everyone's sort of like, you have a front end process. And I think using some of the planning money, whether from CDBG or from this new program that could come out of Build Back Better, to help communities sort of like have a robust community conversation around that might help. It is not an easy thing, and I don't know if others on the call have other suggestions on that front. We could be working on identifying best practices. So some communities are being successful here, and we could highlight best practices. So that could be an example of capacity building that we could be doing here.
I would just, jump in. Thanks, Todd. Just to say that I think there's a lot of opportunity through the potential Build Back Better, as well as through the recently passed infrastructure portfolio, including broadband, but infrastructure portfolio around development and around federal agencies, state agencies, local municipalities, and counties being able to really be coordinated in their planning. And I think Todd really hit that. For affordable housing, but also for their economic recovery, as well as their infrastructure planning. So we've been really working at our level with our federal partners to make sure that we are aligning how we design and develop these programs that will then come to communities, and really want to sincerely do that with communities, so that we make sure that as these funds come, which are going to be transformative, and can have great impact in our communities, that we are able to help communities look at these really important issues, but in a global sense with all of the funding that's coming. So that's just kind of adding on to that need for planning and coordination kind of goes through the HUD portfolio, but also with our other federal partners like USDA and others.
I would add that to me, I have been a not-for-profit entity that received HUD funding in another life. And one of the key things about Nimbyism I found was that folks felt uncomfortable with what was going to be built there. There were two things: who was going to be in the housing and how it was going to look. Well, it's hard to change who's going to be in the housing, because we're normally helping folks who are underserved and they need the help. But the other key thing is how it's going to look. And to me, if you are in a community, they want to make sure the housing is going to be something that won't be detrimental to their property values, the looks, etc. So the best thing to do, we used to have a charrette and show them other developments that we've done that look just like regular housing. So the key thing to me, one of the key things, is for you to show them that the housing, the look of the housing, is going to be the same as any other housing in the area. And especially now, we are building quality, affordable housing that really looks seamless and anybody would want to live in. That's what we should be building. They underwrite the cost of it, but we want it to be high quality and the same look as any other housing. As it relates to the individuals that are going to be there, you just indicate the type of support services that are going to be around. But have a charrette, have a meeting, show them what you've done, show them the type of housing you're putting there, and it should be of high quality. That's how you sell it in the community in terms of the look, because that's one of the first things that people think about.
So this, I think, goes for more than just home, but the question was regarding home, but requiring home funds to flow through the state, a city, or a county adds significant time to the approach to get those funds into rural communities. Is there a way that the process could be streamlined, or that funds could go directly from HUD to local housing providers?
So I'll start with this for home and for HTF. I'm Caitlin Renner. I'm an assistant director in the policy division. We administer in the Office of Affordable Housing Programs, and we administer home, HTF, and the Home American Rescue Plan program. So there's really not a way to streamline this process statutorily. These block grants are to be provided via formula to states and local governments. And sort of the purpose of the program is this local, state and local decision making. So HUD really cannot provide these funds directly to developers, nonprofits, or individuals. They have to go to the states and local governments, and then those jurisdictions make decisions about, how to best allocate the resources.
Did you want to add something to that, Robert? I see your hand waving. You may be muted.
I was muted, yeah. So the state CDBG program, in addition to that, is similar in that nature that there is, it's not viewed as something that is intended to slow down or make the program more bureaucratic. It's intended to make local decision making primary in both the home and the state CDBG program. So that's why you see that layer of involvement at the state level.
So the next question is about multiple sources of funding. So as developers of affordable housing, it is required to use many, many sources of funding. And sometimes, especially in these rural programs, it's coming from USDA and from HUD. Is there a way to increase the reciprocity between these two programs, say for income guidelines for HUD programs or environmental reviews for the two different programs?
I guess I'll take this one. Others people are always welcome to jump in here, but we have at various times we've put together working groups between all of the agencies, Treasury with tax credit, USDA with their programs, the various HUD programs, to talk about how we can make our programs better aligned. One of the challenges, of course, is that each of these programs were developed statutorily without thinking about how they connect to each other. And oftentimes we find ourselves, and this is what our, multifamily developers find themselves doing, is trying to figure out how they can get these puzzle pieces that aren't quite built to go together. And so this is a project that we need to continue to work on. And so I certainly expect that we will have, we'll be doing a lot more of that, especially with the amount of money that's flowing now, to be able to figure out how we can get these funds more coordinated. Now, one thing about the Build Back Better money, though, and all this new money that's flowing, is maybe you will have to do less of that. Maybe you can get a single source because the dollar amounts are substantial, or only two sources that work better together to be able to do these developments, and that might make things a little easier too. So these are kind of things to think about, because in some ways all this new money is it's a new world in the housing development space, and maybe you don't have to have 6 sources to do a deal.
And I do want to give a shout out to the SHOP program, which did agree to have reciprocity with HUD, with the USDA income banding guidelines for the last 2 years. And that was a huge help for the rural SHOP grantees. So thank you for that. So more of that is welcome.
Yeah. Let me add to that in terms of that process. This is Jackie Williams, Director of the Office of Rural Housing and Economic Development. The Office of Rural Housing and Economic Development was created to ensure that HUD and USDA work together regarding administering HUD programs, but looking at USDA programs as a way of our grantees to leverage. We have been actively working together since the existence of the office for almost 20 years, where we have a working group, and we identify strategies on an ongoing basis. One of the issues, when we go back to the point about rural and urban, one thing that we can say about SHOP is 50% of our current funding in terms of our projects are in rural and urban. So it's across the board, 50-50 in terms of the programs that have been conveyed. But as we move forward and look at our policies, we also have to consider formula grants versus competitive grants. Competitive grants, of course, provide for SHOP a little bit more flexibility in terms of how we oversee and operate the program. And of course, there's a significant level of leveraging that leverage the federal dollars. So that's important as we move forward regarding policy and working with other federal agencies to leverage all of our programs.
And I can speak briefly to the environmental review requirements in terms of reciprocity. Just a heads up, the current NEPA rule does allow for adoption of environmental reviews from other federal agencies. So if you are working with USDA and it's the same scope for the same project, you can adopt that environmental review in lieu of completing an additional one. We have FAQs on that coming soon, but they are not posted publicly yet. So feel free to reach out to me and I can share those.
Thank you, Lauren. While capacity building is critical to improve, increasing the supply of quality, affordable housing in rural America, there are other obstacles that prevent dollars from flowing, and Todd disappeared. So maybe, I don't know who I'm going to give this to, that there's other barriers. Program requirements such as match. So match is harder to come by in rural America because philanthropy also flows to urban areas. The income requirements, like for instance, the ARP home dollars rules were based on urban definitions of income. And so 30% people in very, very low poverty areas is really, really low versus, I live here in Washington, D.C. and 30% is low, but a lot of the people who live in rural, like Appalachia, some of the other persistent poverty areas wouldn't even qualify at 80. Like, it's just crazy. So any thoughts on helping those other barriers?
I just want to speak about your last comment about the Home Art program. So, the Home Art program is a bit different than the Home program. Eligibility is really not based, at least not solely, on income, and the intended beneficiaries really are the homeless and those at risk of homeless. So the notice that we put out actually establishes qualifying populations, which include the homeless, those at risk of homelessness, other populations, which sort of means people that have unstable housing, victims of domestic violence, and then veterans that qualify under one of the other categories. So not all of the definitions actually have an income component. So I don't think that there's, so much of a barrier for home ARP as you might think that there is. The 30% is in one of the definitions. I believe it's people at risk of homelessness, but there's a higher income income definition and part of the definition of the other populations. But again, this program is really meant to serve the homeless or people that may become homeless, as opposed to the home program, which does have a much higher income limit, of course, up to 80%. So just wanted to address that last point you made there.
And Aileen, if I can, I just want to caution us here, our panelists. I'm assuming that the majority of folks who are here know most of the acronyms we're using, but the ARP, as we're calling it, just for those who may not know, is the American Rescue Plan. So I hope that we'll be mindful that some folks may not be able to pick up on all of our acronyms. So let's make sure that we spell those out at least the first time before we delve into using them.
Thanks, Steve. It's why it's important that you not retire.
Well, I shouldn't have said that then. I got 27 days, so I'm here to answer any questions today and until that time.
So, IATA, this puts a lot of pressure on you. So, IATA will be taking over Steve's portfolio.
You're in great hands.
So maybe we'll mute Steve now and make IATA talk.
Oh, great. Yes, I'm definitely sad that my leader is departing us, but I will do my very best to carry the torch in his absence.
Okay. Well, I'm going to get back to questions because they are coming in fast and furiously. One is, sorry, I'm trying to scroll and I've lost the ones that I wanted to ask. Here it is. So, question, can state agencies prevent certain nonprofits from applying for HUD money that flows to the states, whether it be home or CHODO funds?
Okay, I'm sorry. Was that? Could you ask that again?
Yeah, I'll read the whole
I heard
thing.
my name.
No, you didn't hear your name.
Oh, okay.
So if HUD subgrantees, if HUD subgrants public taxpayer home CHOTO funds to state agencies, can state agencies prevent certain nonprofit affordable housing entities from applying for those funds, or prevent them from receiving notifications, or must they allow equal access to all nonprofits?
So for the home program, when states are making decisions about how to allocate their funding or how to award their funding to nonprofit developers, they're not required to follow procurement rules. So there's no like open competition requirements. So there's really nothing in the rule about whether or not they could prevent a certain nonprofit from applying for funds. They don't even have to run a competition, frankly, to provide those funds. But the rules that are set up for home is that the state considers the capacity of the organizations, any organization, public or public, nonprofit, or private developers as well, before providing home funds. And of course, they have to meet all of the rest of the definition of commitment before providing home funds, which includes, in addition to looking at the capacity and the financial capacity of the organization, considering other aspects of the project like the budget and the underwriting.
Great. So we talked a little bit about ARP. And then Steve called us on using the acronym. So I'm going to go with a Build Back Better, BBB question. So with Build Back Better, will HUD establish new programs that nonprofits can apply for directly, or will everything go through the existing programs that basically some go to the states?
Great, thanks. I'm going to jump in. Again, this is Robin Keegan. I'm the DAS for Economic Development. We are really excited about the portfolio and hopeful for passage for Build Back Better. From one of the programs that I'll speak, there are a number of programs that that grantees, nonprofits will be eligible grantees for. One that I'm most excited about personally is one that I've been working with many on the phone here and many other stakeholders across the country, is called the Community Restoration and Revitalization Fund. And this program funds community revitalization, economic revitalization, affordable housing, community land trusts. We like to talk about it as really that community development part of the work that we do here at HUD. And we will directly fund nonprofit organizations in partnerships. There will be lead applicants who are required to be local community-based nonprofits that serve their community, and then partnered with other organizations, either local, regional, national, that can help them to build the capacity or bring to them a capacity that they may not have themselves, but know are important to implementing these funds. So we're going to, we have a lot of planning and design work to do on that program, but we do really understand the need that in addition to the funds that go through state, counties, and local municipalities, that there's an important aspect of funding our local communities. And we look at that. We're really thrilled and excited to get that program designed and developed and out the door.
Thank you. So looking at the time, we have 1 minute before everybody should go over and have a similar conversation with the USDA folks. So does anyone unprompted have anything else that we didn't ask about that they would like to answer?
I just want to end up my comments by saying that it came up about the funding level that it's gone to rural communities. I would certainly advocate that all of you continue to push the effort to receive more funding on the federal level, USDA, HUD, et cetera, for rural communities. You're underserved, and the other Section 4 program has been successful at this. So I would suggest that you advocate for doing the same. And it's already been stated that it's a deficit there. So I would suggest that you advocate for that, just as others have.
And I'd also like to add something quickly, if I may. I'd like to let our stakeholders know that we are really looking at trying to expand our understanding and our engagement with our capacity building grantees. And so one of the things that my team has been working on is trying to develop what we're going to call an Rcb Rollout, where we're going to have grantees kind of roll out for our benefit of understanding the various initiatives and programs that they're working on. So folks should be mindful of that as an upcoming project. And we look at that as an opportunity to also showcase for Congress and external stakeholders some of the great work that our grantees are doing.
Thank you. Okay, so just perfect timing. Thank you all for all the work you do every day. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules and joining us here at HAC. And let's all go join the USDA folks. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.